I don't, again, I don't see leadership qualities in any of these folks. Leadership is about making tough decisions, even if they're unpopular, right? If you're looking at what's happening at border, for instance, it wasn't until July of this year that the Biden administration put a clamp down on immigration. They had 4 years to do it, but gee, I wonder if it has anything to do with the election cycle. All of a sudden they're clamping down and wanting to be tougher. Well, hi, Ronin leaders, and welcome to another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. Hope all is well with all of you. First of all, as always, want to thank all of you for all your support in supporting this channel. We've had in the last couple of months an exponential increase in the number of subscribers, and we're getting close to 2,500 subscribers. So thanks a lot for all of you supporting the channel. Continue to do so. If you're liking the content, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and please share this content with people you think that could benefit from it. And please also go to mikehowardauthor.com, where you'll be able to find some other tidbits on leadership, as well as links to my books. I've got 2 leadership books out, The Art of Ronin Leadership and The Art of Executing Ronin Leadership Strategies, and also 2 novels, Full Circle and Blood Promise. And I'm writing a 3rd one right now, and those are all action novels, and they've done very well in terms of reviews and being Amazon bestsellers. So please check those out. I want to talk about something a little bit different today. We are in the midst of a huge political season. Needless to say, we are in the midst of our presidential campaign, and in another couple months, we'll be going to the polls to vote for either Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump. And this is going to be a nonpartisan discussion. But again, it always goes back to leadership. And what is disconcerting to me, and has been for the last few years, is the idea that people are voting on something as critical as the leader of the free world, the presidency of the United States, based on what I call personality versus policy. And I've actually had debates with people on this, friends, and even some relatives about this, do you vote the person or do you vote policy? And I think because of the personalities involved in the last couple of elections, this issue has been exacerbated. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I remember in the last election cycle, and I was talking to friends as well as some relatives, and we got into this discussion about Donald Trump, and it was like, well, I can't vote for Donald Trump. And one of my friends is very conservative, and I'm a conservative. I'm not a Republican. My wife and I are an independent. Used to be Republicans, but you heard me say before, there's been a pox on both houses, as I put it. Both have been irresponsible with our budget, and both have been irresponsible in not showing true leadership. But again, they're politicians, so we don't necessarily attribute politicians with having great leadership qualities, but that's for another video. Be that as it may, Trump obviously is a lightning rod, and what happens is when I was having these discussions with my friends and one of my relatives, and we had the discussion, and they were saying, well, I'm not voting for Trump, I'm going to vote for Biden. Okay, that's fine. Why? Well, because I can't stand Trump. I don't like Trump. I don't like the way he acts. I don't like his behavior. All right, so if you let's just take that, let's just bucket that, okay? Listen, from a pure leadership standpoint, no, Trump fails in all regards in terms of being selfless, being humble, giving credit where credit is due, keeping your ego in check, um, being a good role model. Yeah, he fails in all those areas, right? He's arrogant. He's a blowhard. He makes fun of people. He's juvenile when he calls people names. He's all those things that we know that he's all about. But my argument to these other folks was, okay, you're going to select a president because you don't like him as a person, or you may not even think he's a good person, right? And I dare say we've had a host of presidents that weren't necessarily good people, but they did good things for the country. And so I said, so what are the policy issues about, Biden and the Democrats that you like? And they really couldn't discuss it. They couldn't say anything other than, they thought that Biden was a more decent person. Well, I think a lot of people in this country have gone down that rabbit hole. You are voting on the basis of personality, as opposed to looking at the policies of Donald Trump and the policies of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, and just saying, okay, so what are the policies that they are supporting and saying that they are going to implement? And are those policies in line with my beliefs and how I believe the country would move forward better if those policies were implemented, right? So if you're a Democrat or a liberal and you want to vote for Kamala Harris, it shouldn't be because she's female or she's black or she's not Donald Trump, right? It should be because she should be able to articulate what policies, whether it's immigration, whether it's crime, whether it's the economy, whether it's our engagement in foreign wars, all those issues, she should be able to delineate. And if she delineates it to your satisfaction, vote for her. The same thing with Donald Trump. You should be able to look at the policy statements that they have and what they intend to do and determine whether or not that aligns with your mores, your beliefs, and how you want to see our country move forward. That should be it. It should have nothing to do with, Kamala Harris laughs too much, so I'm not going to vote for her. Or Donald Trump calls people names, I'm not going to vote for him. That is totally immaterial. And I know people say, no, we need someone that's a statesman or a stateswoman or statesperson. I don't care what pronoun you use to lead the country. I get that. I get that 100%. My personal opinion, and this is just Mike Howard, is I don't think we've had a statesperson in a long time, right? I don't think, Trump was necessarily the best on stage. There were times when he was good and there were times he wasn't. I think Joe Biden has been a disaster in terms of being a statesman. And certainly Kamala has not shown, she didn't show up until recently, right? Until when the Democrats forced Biden to step down. So, and I don't, again, I don't see leadership qualities in any of these folks. Leadership is about making tough decisions, even if they're unpopular, right? If you're looking at what's happening at the border, for instance, it wasn't until July of this year that the Biden administration put a clamp down on immigration. They had 4 years to do it, but gee, I wonder if it has anything to do with the election cycle. All of a sudden they're clamping down and wanting to be tougher, on the border. And, you could say, well, they were evaluating the situation or whatever it is. My point is you could point fingers at either side and poke holes at them. So from a personality standpoint, you can poke holes at every single one of them, or every president that ever lived, for that matter. But you have to vote on policy. If you don't vote on policy, as opposed to personality, you're going to make a wrong decision. And I've had friends that, say they voted for Joe Biden last time when normally they would have voted more conservative. And there's buyer's remorse, right? But it's too late. The things that he did that you disagree with, you voted for him. You put him in office, right? Simply because of personality and not voting for policy, the things that you think would really move America forward. So you have no one simply, frankly, to blame for yourself, or you have no one to blame but yourself, I should say. Um, so I think as a voter, as a citizen of this country, especially at this critical time, right? We have so many issues, and we always have had issues, right? And I'm sure every generation says that, well, the issues we had, whether it was civil rights in the 60s or Vietnam in the 70s or, inflation and the bank crisis of the 80s or 9/11 and all these things of the early 2000s, there are always going to be crisis situations that face this country, which require leadership to get us through. Now that also begs the question, okay, so can you actually expect politicians to be leaders? No, not necessarily. Remember, not that if you're in business, you're perfect, but business people, and I learned this making the transition from government to business, and I thought I had a fairly good leadership grounding at the CIA, and I had a lot of senior positions and had to make some hard decisions. Most of them, kind of life and death kind of decisions. But you get into a place like Microsoft, you get into a place where you are actually dealing with P&Ls, profits and losses. You're in a publicly traded corporation. You're accountable to shareholders and to a board of directors. Leaders have to make critical decisions. If you're selling a product and all of a sudden no one's buying that product, well, guess what? You're going to have to make decisions. Cutting back on production, that means letting people go, reductions in force, changing your strategy because maybe you made a boneheaded strategy and now you've got to go a different direction. These are critical decisions that business people have to make every single day in order to keep their business viable and profitable. You don't find that in politics, and so you look at Congress and the Senate, and I especially look at them because those are the folks that are causing most of the problems. Yes, whoever's in the president sets policy tone, and that's also very critical, but there's no leadership in Congress, both from the left or the right. They continue to print money and spend money. They continue to expand the government. Could you imagine corporations just continuing to expand their shareholders' dollars when they're losing market share, but they're still buying new buildings and they're still hiring a bunch of people and et cetera, et cetera? No, that doesn't happen. In fact, what happens is, especially in the tech industry in the last 4 years or so, when there was a ramp up of growth, and there's still growth in tech, but I'm talking a ramp up of growth of headcount, people that you hire, and all of a sudden with downturn, with COVID and all this other kind of stuff, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, all these companies had to lay a bunch of people off. You would never see that in government. We are at, I don't know how many trillions of dollars of debt right now as a country. And as a business person, you would say, okay, we've got to cut back because this debt is not sustainable. We're passing it on to generations and generations of people. But rather than make the hard decision the way business people have to do, these silly idiot politicians kick the can down the road. We're in right now, like I said, it's 29 September. They're still fighting over a budget for next year. And it happens every single year where they know they got a whole year to plan for the next budget for the country. And yet it always comes to this deadline and these standouts and these, I want this involved in the bill from the Democrats. I want this involved in the bill from the Republicans. And then these last minute, deadlines, and we have to, let's extend it for another 30 days. These aren't decision makers. These aren't leaders. These are just politicians playing at being leaders. Whenever I hear Leader McConnell or Leader Schumer, it makes me laugh because they're not leaders. They're the antithesis of what leadership is all about. Leadership is about making hard decisions. You should be cutting back the size of government. And unfortunately, that means that people in government lose their jobs, but government's bloated. And you have to make hard decisions. You can't fund everything, right? You have to prioritize. When you're in business, you're given a budget for the fiscal year that you have ostensibly had input in the previous fiscal year, where you put down what your priorities are for your organization, how that aligns with your boss's organization, how that aligns with the overall organization of the enterprise, and you get a budget. And hopefully you get all you ask for, but if you don't, then you prioritize. Okay, so we can't do these 5 things we want to do this fiscal year as an organization. We can do 3, or we can do 4, or whatever it is that you and your team come up with. And you have to, then something gets dropped, and somebody's pet project or thing gets dropped, and there are hurt feelings, but you have to make the decision as a leader of the organization to what's best for that organization. Again, you don't see that in government. You never see them cutting back on everything. We're spending billions of dollars in Ukraine. If you think that's a great thing, then you should continue to vote for the people that are going to continue to do that. If you think that money would be better spent here in the U.S. On solving the homeless problem, building more schools, putting more security in schools, hiring more teachers, paying more teachers better, putting more cops on the streets, maybe providing more social services for people to get them off drugs, whatever, right? If you feel that some of that money would be better spent here, then obviously you should vote for, the conservative point of view, or whoever is espousing that position. My point is, don't look to politicians to be leaders. They're mouthpieces only. Very few, and there are some, so I don't want to broad brush all politicians. There are some politicians that are leaders that want to make the hard decisions and try to make the hard decisions, but maybe they're stymied by their party or what have you, and they end up leaving. I think a lot of good people either never get into politics because they understand, or like, for instance, Congress or the Senate, they never go into it because they know that they're not going to be able to do the things that they want to do, especially if they come from a business background. Or they get driven out. They get frustrated and say, hey, screw it, I can make more money, being a talking head on Fox News or MSNBC as opposed to dealing with this junk, right? And that's hard. That's disheartening for the country, because we're not necessarily getting the best and brightest into Congress and the Senate. But my point is, this is a leadership podcast, and this is a moment for you to practice true leadership in how you vote, right? You need to approach your vote the way a business person would approach a critical business decision, okay? Do we go this way with this marketing and production strategy, or we go this way with this marketing and production strategy? Each of them have their own pitfalls, and there are pros and cons to each. You've got to make a decision, you and your team, ultimately you, as to which way you want to go, and what's the best ROI for your organization and your enterprise, your company. That's how you approach voting. You look at Donald Trump, and you look at the Republican platform. You look at Kamala Harris and the Democratic platform, and you look at it from a business standpoint. From your optic, what platforms are going to serve the country best, right? And part of this, what things are you more vested in? But I think you have to take yourself out of the equation. That's another part of business, right? Colin Powell used to have this great saying, don't let your ego get so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. And one of the things he meant by that was, let's say I'm back at Microsoft, and we go back to the scenario, the example. We build a budget. We want to do 5 different things this fiscal year, 5 big things, right? And one of those things I'm really invested in. Like, I really want to do this. And we come back, and the CFO and the controllers say, okay, you wanted this amount of money, you're going to get this much, right? Now we got to make the critical decisions. I, as a leader, can't automatically say, well, because I think this priority is the one that's my pet, the one I really love, that's going to go to the top, and we'll figure out which one of my other direct reports and their priorities, which one gets chopped. No, that's not how it goes. I, as a leader, have to weigh now what I think is important with everybody else, and then look at, from the global security perspective, which I ran, at Microsoft, what is going to give us the best ROI, the best security for our employee population, the best technology so we can drive our operations, the best ability to be business enablers, all those things that we worked on for years to build. That is the criteria, not my own ego, not what I think should be number one, right? And then we come up with our, now instead of 5, let's say 3 top priorities for the next fiscal year. And maybe mine doesn't make the cut, but that's okay, right? And so part of your responsibility as leaders, informed voters, is to make sure that you are very critical in how you decide who to vote for. Yes, I know, you don't like Trump, or you don't like Kamala Harris, or you love Trump and you love Kamala Harris, and so that's why you're voting for them. But you've got to take that out of the equation for a little bit. And I know it's hard because we are all humans and we have visceral reactions to either one of these 2 candidates based on our political beliefs and personal beliefs and what have you. But you got to take that out of the equation for a second and say, okay, put on your business hats. Which platforms, which policies are going to be the best for the country? That's it. Now, once you make that determination, all right, then you can, bring your other stuff back in, your who you like and who you don't like, and determine that if, again, I don't know if this scenario, I guess anything is in the realm of possibility. Let's say you are a dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter, but you do what I just told you to do. You put on your leadership hat, and for some reason you look at Kamala Harris's platform and you think, overall, I think her direction is going to be better for the country. I mean, even though I love Donald Trump and blah, 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 well, you may end up, you should vote for her, right? Because now you've employed critical thinking skills that allow you to make the best decision for you because you believe that's the best decision for the country, Not because she's black or a woman, or not because he's white and a male, not because she's, ultra, liberal or he's ultra conservative, none of that stuff. It's all about the policy. So I challenge you. I'm actually challenging you to look at that. I'm challenging myself, right? Because I know, like I said, you all know I lean pretty conservative, right? But I'm continuing to study platforms, and depending on whose platforms I think are going to be the best, that's who I vote for. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to approach this from a leadership standpoint. This is the same as making a critical business decision. In one case, we're talking about the ROI would be whether your organization succeeds or fails, and the consequences thereof. Here, it's the future of our country, whether it succeeds or fails, whether we can make tough, critical decisions. And so, remember, if you don't remember anything else, remember these. Just remember this from this podcast. Do not look at politicians as leaders, because most are not. They're talking heads. They're used to manipulation. They're used to saying what needs to be said to get elected and doing whatever they can to raise money to get elected. They're not used to making hard, critical decisions. You take a look at most politicians, most have never had a business background. Yet for some reason, they seem to be able to want to, impose policy on businesses when they never had to drive a P&L, when they never had to make budget cuts, when they've never had to let people go, and even good people for the good of the business. They never had to make those hard decisions, right? So do not equate politicians with leadership. That's number one. And number two, vote policy, not personality. I don't care if you have to hold your nose while you make that vote, right, on the ballot sheet. I don't care. Our country's future is too critical for you to vote on personality. In fact, I think if you vote strictly on personality, you are not an informed voter. You are not utilizing critical thinking or leadership skills, and you're doing our country a disservice by doing that. And there you have it. So that's what I have for you today. A little bit off topic, I get it, but I think it's this situation that we're in our country is we're so polarized, and you watch MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, and all these idiot talking heads. They've got their positions. They don't know any more than you do, right? Most of them are not really journalists anymore. They're not looking for truth. They're just looking to enhance whatever their personal opinions are, which is not journalism. But again, that's for another podcast. My point is, you want to practice good leadership in all aspects of your life, including your role as a citizen. So, with that, take that to heart. I would be very happy to hear your comments and what you think about it. You may totally disagree with my premise. Like I said, the conversation I had 4 years ago with some people, they totally disagreed with me. They said, no, it's important to vote personality. And I know, you have your opinion. You're wrong, but you have your opinion. But tell me what you think. And please send comments. I love to hear it. And so that's it, what we have for today. We've got actually some guests lined up. I did 2 podcasts a couple weeks ago, 2 in a row, 2 different individuals, a couple of guys, and a really great friend of mine who's an author that I know, and other community leaders. That should be coming out soon. We've got other guests lined up, but hey, please give us ideas of who you want to see on this podcast, or kind of people you want to have. Again, please continue to hit the like button. Please continue to hit the subscribe button. Share this video, leave your comments, and continue to support us. Go to MikeHowardAuthor.com if you want to find links to buy my books. And until next time, be an informed voter and be a leader in this election cycle. See ya.